$10,000. For that you get the head, the tail, the whole damn thing. Jaws stars Roy Scheider. Jaws stars Roy Scheider. Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Shaw. Jaws stars Roy Scheider. Jaws stars Roy Scheider, Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Shaw, and is directed by Steven Spielberg. I think that's the first time I've ever said directed by Steven Spielberg in one of my reviews. Is this my first Steven Spielberg review? I guess it is. Holy crap, guys, we are talking about Jaws. This is my Jaws review. Somebody asked me a couple weeks ago to review Jaws. I think I've been asked a few times to review this movie, and I've always been planning on reviewing Jaws. Really, Jaws is one of my favorite movies ever. What can be said about Jaws that hasn't been said already? I guess we're gonna find out. Guys, I really don't need to give you a plot synopsis on Jaws because I'm sure all of you have seen it. Jaws is one of the most iconic movies of all time. It's a major part of my life. This movie is so important. You know, I constantly talk about Halloween, but I would say Halloween and Jaws are the two movies that I have seen the most in my life. I literally watch Jaws at least once, sometimes twice a year. And every time I watch it, it's still just as great. It's still just as exhilarating. I never get tired of this movie at all. And what's cool about Jaws is it is the first blockbuster. It's the first movie to cross $100 million domestically. No movie had done that before Jaws. It's really the first summer blockbuster. And the story behind the movie is just as interesting as the movie itself. Like Star Wars, Jaws was just constantly troubled with production problems. The damn shark, Bruce, would constantly sink to the bottom of Martha's Vineyard, and they would have to lift it back up. So the reason you don't see Bruce in the movie that much is because they could never get the damn thing to work, and it really was a happy accident. The movie works so effectively because you don't see the shark. Spielberg had to use that to his advantage. He had to find ways to scare you because he couldn't show you Bruce. He couldn't show you the shark. I've actually talked to my parents about this movie because they actually saw Jaws in the theater. I don't know about you, but I always envy people that got to see movies like Jaws, like Psycho, in the theater. To me, it's the greatest experience ever to see your favorite movie in the theater. I've seen Halloween, the first Halloween, in the theater twice, but I've never been able to see it when it first came out, of course, because I was, too young. But for some reason, that's a question I do ask, older people. Did you see Jaws in the theater? And when they say yes, I want to know their story. I want to know how they felt about it. Was it really that scary? And every time they tell me, oh yeah, it petrified everybody. Nobody wanted to go in the water after this movie. That's how effective Jaws was. But let's talk about what works with Jaws. Why is this movie so effective? If you take away the shark, if you take away the threat, the characters in this movie are so relatable. You feel like you know these characters by the time they're in danger. There are so many moments in this movie that have been repeated constantly. There's so many one-liners.
Well, this is not a boat accident. It wasn't any propeller. It wasn't any coral reef. And it wasn't Jack the Ripper. It was a shark.
My favorite character in the movie really is Quint. I mean, I got the shirt to prove it, but Robert Shaw is just one of the greatest character actors I think I've ever seen.
$10,000 for me by myself. For that you get the head, the tail, the whole damn thing.
The way he handles that character, he's so rude, he's so stubborn. He's really a pain in the ass throughout the whole movie. And I love that push and pull between him and Richard Dreyfuss's character. Hooper was an educated man, whereas Quint, he was really a roughneck. He worked his whole life on the marina. And there are just so many great scenes between them two. And really, my favorite scene in the movie is the Indianapolis scene when Robert Shaw is talking about how all these Navy seamen were lost at sea and hundreds of them were eaten by sharks. But that scene is directed so well by Spielberg because it starts off, really light, really funny even, and then it just gradually shifts when Robert Shaw starts talking about that experience. And that is proof that Jaws is such a great movie because they weren't in danger at that moment, but you were still completely captivated. Also, I gotta talk about Spielberg. This was his second movie, I believe. His first movie was Duel. It's amazing that such a young director could pull off something as big as Jaws. And Spielberg has said that when he thinks about Jaws, he thinks about two things, courage and stupidity. He has said that he probably wouldn't have directed it today like he did then. His youth and his stupidity pushed him to finish the movie. And can you imagine how stressful that set would be? Knowing that you're in charge of this movie and you can't get your damn shark to work. I can't imagine the stress the guy must have been through, and to be able to pull out a movie as effective as Jaws. And also, I can't not talk about the score. The score for Jaws is so simplistic, almost like the Halloween theme is so simplistic, but it just works on so many levels. Still to this day, even when people look at the beach, they hear that theme in their head. It is really one of the most effective themes ever. And finally, I gotta talk about the last act of the movie. Really, the last act is Quint, Hooper, and Brody dealing with Jaws. And Spielberg has stated that every time you look at a scene in that segment of the movie, if you were to turn the camera around, you would see the beach. It looks like they're surrounded by ocean when in fact they're not. But there are moments in that scene that are iconic with the "we're gonna need a bigger boat" line.
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chump some of this shit. You're gonna need a bigger boat.
But also where you think these guys are probably gonna die because little by little the boat is literally sinking. That when they finally do take out the shark, it really is just the greatest feeling ever. Really, Jaws feels like a meal. Once it's over, you are full. And it was the greatest meal you have ever eaten. That's the best way I can describe Jaws. To me, it's the perfect movie. There is not a scene in Jaws that isn't completely captivating, even after you've watched it hundreds of times, like I have. If there were a rating higher than Trapped on an Island, I would give it to Jaws. That's how great this movie is. So anyway, guys, that is my review for Jaws. Looking forward to reading your comments, and I'd like to hear about the first time you saw Jaws and how it affected you, because everybody has a memory of Jaws. To me, it's not a movie, it's an experience. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd, and Drumdum out.